welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow, India's largest platform for entrepreneurs. I'm Sunanda Jayasseelan. Two companies joining us in the hot seat tonight. First up is Wellversed. We also have FreshToHome in the hot seat tonight. Let me quickly go ahead and welcome Wellversed joining us on the show tonight. One person who needs absolutely no introduction, Yuvraj Singh, who's associated very closely with the company. We also have the co-founder and CEO of the company, Aman Khurma, joining us on the show. Gentlemen, thank you for your time here on the show. Yuvraj, let me start by first talking to you about your association with Wellversed and, why you decided to associate with this team, what that experience has been like.
A young entrepreneur, I can say right now, means a lot, something to make a difference to society, help the angel investors, being the angel investor, help them achieve their dreams. Because I as a young kid also wanted, people to help me achieve my dreams. So it's just giving back to society, create an ecosystem where you can create some magical things for society.
Okay.
And I think working with Alan team has, I think the name Wellversed was very interesting, that it was something that to be made in a particular way. So I just thought that when we discussed, I think the products were very interesting, because as an athlete, I always believe that the nutrition in any product has to be very important to maximize the health span of any individual. So I believe that working together, I realized that we could create a big ecosystem for health awareness.
Anand, so before we go any further, maybe you could introduce your product for our viewers, for those who are wondering, what Wellversed does. What would you like to tell them?
So actually, the journey has been very interesting. And, when we started interacting with Yuvraj sir, we were a house of brands. We were creating brands that were centered on different dietary regimes. So we created a brand for ketogenic diet. We created a brand for vegan diet. And, these are brands which have now become very popular in the ecosystem, especially within the wellness community. But what that has given us a chance to do is that, we have kind of become the leaders of enabling D2C brands, right? And the model in the past 1.5 years have pivoted to enabling wellness brands rather than just creating our own D2C products. So we do have a set of our own brands, but that is not the major offering as of now. Now we are more of an accelerator and an enabler for other wellness D2C brands.
Yuvraj, you were talking to us about the importance of nutrition as an athlete. So what can you tell us, and what can you tell our viewers about some of the products in this entire portfolio that Wellversed has that you are particularly excited about?
As we have more than 400, 500 products, but the alkaline proteins and the lactose-free bars are probably the ones that I eat, because I'm obviously after my, treatment and illness, I have to be very careful with my diet, and we created, a couple of things which help people after recovery as well. So we're working on that line. So a lot of products coming in the future.
Anand, I understand that the health and wellness industry is valued at nearly 1.5 trillion, growing at about 5 to 10%. My question is, as more and more people, especially during the pandemic, are moving towards a more health conscious and a healthy lifestyle, how does a company like yours maintain your competitive edge? And also, does a company like you target consumers who are more in urban tier 1 markets, and how do you move beyond that?
So, although we see a lot of reports that have outlined 6 or 7 different segments of how consumers perceive wellness, and we do talk about wellness being a 1.5 trillion market, but the reality of the Indian market is that it's just occupying 5 to 7% of that share.
Sure.
So in that sense, I would say that the Indian market is in its early infancy, right? And a lot of what is going to happen will happen in this decade, right? And, the pivot that we made from just being centered on nutrition products to wellness brands was specifically to facilitate this. What we see is that this decade, will give birth to a lot of wellness brands that will be there for the next 20, 30 years, right? And the key segments that we're focused on right now, nutrition obviously is our forte, right? So we've also started experimenting in skincare. We've also started experimenting in fitness equipment. But the aim is to be able to create an holistic ecosystem that enables these wellness brands across 6 to 7 categories, the way consumers perceive it.
This question is to both of you. There also exists a large market which perhaps, has some basic understanding of health but doesn't really know how and why. And there's also a lot of misinformation when it comes to health and, consuming a specific kind of diet or a specific kind of product. So my question is, how do you go about disseminating the right kind of information? Because once people are aware, then they will automatically perhaps turn consumers.
People are more aware these days that what is the right health product for them, and people are always searching online markets, or wherever they got shopping. People have the awareness, but unfortunately, our country, only 2.5% of people play sport, and probably a 5-10% of the population goes for probably goes to the gym or some healthy regime. So I think it's important for people to, get out there. Obviously, COVID has made us realize that how important our health is. So it's important for people out there to get out there, work hard on their bodies, because health is your wealth. And when they realize the importance of their health, they will go out there in the market and search for the right products, which are healthier and, which have the right nutrition, and which creates their health span, which helps them to live longer and healthier. There's no point living longer. If you're living healthier, you will automatically live longer.
Yuvraj, you wear multiple hats. You're an entrepreneur, you're an investor, you have UVCAN, of course, that looks at small businesses and investing in interesting businesses, from what I understand. A recent interview I was reading of yours said that as an entrepreneur, you are very risk-taking. Does that perhaps also describe your approach when it comes to making investments?
If you don't take a risk, you don't know what's on the other side. And I think that's the reason why I invested in Wellversed and Anand, because these young guys, they're always, up for taking a risk. They're always experimenting with their products. And they never shy away to, get the product better and better. So I think that's the reason why I connect with these guys really well. And, whatever startups I invested in, it always has some kind of risk.
Okay.
And that's what my life has been. I've always taken that, one risk where I've, I had to see what's on the other side. So I think that's you got to be smart. You have to take smart risks. You can't be blind and just being, you don't know what's on the other side. So I think you have to take calculated risks in business. So I think that's what the key of UVCAN Ventures is.
Anand, when it comes to your growth strategy, I do know that you had, the acquisition with SportFit. But anything else that's on your radar, anything you're working on that you can share with us?
Obviously, the acquisition of SportFit has been very key to Wellversed, because in order to create a holistic wellness ecosystem, what we see is that assisting consumers to achieve their goals is one of the central themes of wellness. And like I mentioned earlier, large population is still driven by achieving certain wellness and health goals, and they have to be assisted in a certain manner. So that is one thing.
Okay.
But since our deep partnership with Yuvraj sir, what has happened is that we have a lot of inbound celebrity interest to collaborate with them to launch brands, and we have been doing a lot of groundwork this year, working with a few celebrities which I cannot name as of now, but we'll start seeing these announcements in early 2022.
Yuvraj, my last question to you. What advice do you want to leave our viewers with?
Take those calculated risks, but it's important to take risk and live your dreams. I always tell the young entrepreneurs that it's important to dream big. It's important to dream different, think different if you want to be at the stage where you think you belong to. So, go for it, take those risks, but be smart about them.
All right, let's slip into a short break. When we come back, Fresh to Home is on the show tonight. Do come back. Welcome back. You're with us here on Leaders of Tomorrow, and tonight on the show, I'm in conversation with Fresh to Home. Good having you here on the Leaders of Tomorrow, talking to our entrepreneurs about your journey and what is exciting you about this market, in the short term as well as the mid to long term. Let's start by asking you to very briefly describe your entrepreneurial journey leading up really to the setting of Fresh to Home. You're a serial entrepreneur, you've set up businesses in the past. Just give us the highlights of that and how perhaps all of that, in some sense, worked towards you setting up Fresh to Home.
Great to be here, Sunanda. Thank you for having me. So I'm essentially a serial entrepreneur. Started my journey as an engineer in the Valley in early 2000, early 99 end, and done a bunch of different jobs, right? And just, when I speak to entrepreneurs, I typically tell them that, the first phase of your career is always to be with learning things in a hands-on fashion. So I was an engineer. I've done everything in a small 20-person company, including being sort of the electrician and plumber when things did not work out, and then helped take the company public in early 2000. We were listed in NASDAQ, and after and I grew really quickly. I became their enterprise CEO by about 2006. This was in Redwood City in the US. Sure. And after that, I started another company in the cybersecurity space, which was okay. And then I started another company in the commodity space, which was a failure. So the reason I wanted to highlight that is that it took me multiple trials before getting something right. Then in 2009, I joined another smaller company in San Francisco called Zynga, which became extremely large. And I was an officer of the company, and I was their India CEO. And I used to launch games, games like Farmville, Mafia Wars. And then we went public. It was really one of the second largest IPOs in the Valley after Google. So it took a while to get a pattern of getting things done before I started getting a really big hit. And then in 2015, I started Fresh to Home. Fresh to Home was essentially my own journey of not being able to find a good quality fish in Bangalore. I was the CEO for Zynga at that time, and I used to buy fish from a company that my current co-founder, Matthew Joseph, started called C2Home. And I was buying from him regularly until one day when he stopped selling fish. The company had shut down for various reasons. And then I literally could not get good fish. So it was my own sort of journey of not being able to find something. I then went back and found Matthew. And then together with other co-founders, we started Fresh to Home. So it was a journey of sort of solving my own problem that led to Fresh to Home. And that's where I am today.
India supposedly is one of the largest vegetarian markets in the world, although you say that's a misnomer. But I want to understand, your biggest learnings from this market, and for someone who's watching this interview to say, these have been my insights in starting out as an entrepreneur in this industry or the segment.
Let me start it from an entrepreneur's vantage point, right? So essentially, when I think of an idea, I typically think about it in three angles, right? The first is there a large market, right? Because I typically like to go with problems that are large to solve, right? Then you can create an impact. Second, I find out if there is an unmet need, something that the consumer actually is currently craving for. Sure. And then lastly, I go for what is the unfair advantage that you can create. Like these are the three things that I've consistently done across all my entrepreneurial journeys. So fish, interestingly enough, or meat for that matter, is a huge market, right? Fish alone is 1% of India's GDP. India is about 70 to 75% non-vegetarian. Okay. If you think about just a market like fish, it's about 30 to 35 billion US dollars. So imagine the entire Hollywood movies put together, all the Avengers and Spider-Man and all that put together. It's smaller than India's fish market, right? That's how big the market is. The unmet need has always been around, the hygiene and purity, because wet markets are completely unhygienic, and that's what we are solving. We're also solving problems for the fishermen and also the farmers because they get exploited by the middlemen in the whole supply chain. And that's another problem we're solving by directly sourcing from them or aiding them or enabling them to sell with us. And lastly, we use a lot of interesting technology to solve this in a unique way. And that's really how, as an entrepreneur, I looked at the large enough. Is the market large enough? Is there a unique problem to solve? And then how to solve that with an unfair advantage before somebody else could actually get onto it.
Sure. I understand you are looking now more at offline stores, or at least pushing for more offline stores in your entire business strategy. Why is that? Especially at a time when more and more consumers, thanks to the pandemic, have moved their shopping and their needs online. Why perhaps are you looking at this strategy?
That's a great question. So actually, if you look at sort of the traditional way in which, although we know that wet markets are not hygienic, Indians typically always buy from wet markets, right? Wet markets are 99% of the entire source of where people buy from. So as an entrepreneur, I've learned the valuable lesson that you cannot sometimes fight a consumer trend. You have to sort of gently nudge them over, right?
Okay.
And the best way to do that for us is to start an offline store. So when you start an offline store, we see patterns of consumers coming in, and for the first or second or third time, they'll be buying offline, right? They'll come there, they'll check out the quality, and it's quite natural, right? You won't trust a brand or you won't trust a venture without actually experiencing it yourself. Now, COVID gave us a huge shot in the arm for basically allowing consumers to try it first, because wet markets were not accessible. But now with offline stores, we are hoping to do the same thing, right? People will come there, touch and feel, and after that, the business actually goes online. So it is essentially an experience center. It is essentially a way to understand whether FreshToHome as a brand, we stand for non-antibiotic free chicken. We stand for no chemicals, and
Sure.
consumers require a proof point for that. And offline is the best way to do that. And we've seen that as a trend across the industry, right? If you look at sort of other e-commerce companies or other technology first sort of consumer brands, they've also done proof points with experience centers. It's not just in India, it's in China, it's in sort of world over. And that's just a trend that's accelerating. And we are now adopting that trend. We already have about 33 stores, and we are now launching another 100 stores within the next 2 months' time.
So, you're one of the front runners, of course, when it comes to this market. But from the time a consumer places that order till the time the meat is delivered to their home, just give us a brief idea of, what the back end is like.
So let's assume that you're ordering fish, say about 4 a.m. in Delhi, right? The fish actually will very well be in a coastal city. Like it could be in Cochin, it could be in one of those large, harbors.
Sure.
And typically the supply chain today takes somewhere from, 3 days to 8 days. But what we do is that when the fish is caught at 4 a.m. in an auction, we are able to digitize this entire process. And then we are able to then get it to our nearest collection center on the platform by, say, 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. Once it comes to the platform, a consumer at Delhi at 11 a.m. can order the fish, right? And by a 3.5 hours flight, it actually reaches our Noida factories. And then it gets processed overnight. And within 24 hours from catch, right, 4 a.m. to catch, before 8 a.m. next day morning, it gets delivered to the consumer. There is also more faster options that are express in 1 hour's time. But that's entirely how the supply chain works. Traditionally, to navigate the same supply chain, you would have to go to, say, a Calcutta or a Gujarat from Delhi, which would probably be 3 or 4 days away by road transport, and then adding middlemen, probably 6 or 7 days for the consumer. So what we've taken that entire long supply chain into sort of 24 hours from catch. That's essentially the success of what we've built. And we've done that across fish. We've done that across, poultry, and where we make sure that there's no antibiotics. It's farmed by, farmers on our platform, and it's farmed in a way that it honors all the safety protocols. And similar things to, marinated products, right? Which is do not have phosphates or sorbates or some of the standard, components that, industries use for processing. That's really the strength of what we've built and the supply chain that, we take to your home.
All right, Shan. Thanks so much for your time here, Vishu.
Thank you. Thank you, Sunitha.
That's all we could put in tonight's show. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good night.